Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for March 10th through 16th, 2025. So, yes, we're in that time of year where now it's daylight. So, we had daylight savings time. Now we're 1 hour ahead than we were before, in case you're scratching your head in Europe or England and you're like, why is it she's on now? But now we have, like I said, we have daylight, and this, I guess, is really talks about that duality of life. We have the night, we have the day. So, having said that, we have some big things going on this week, namely our first eclipse, and this is a pair of eclipses that will really mark March as a major month and really even take us into April, and how this is really even setting us up for two eclipses that I have my eye on in September of 2025. So we have been having eclipses in Aries and Libra since 2023, but that's beginning to shift. And we had our first eclipse in Pisces, so the next sign over, back on September 17th. This was our first sign that the eclipses were going to change signs and also change energy and archetype, because Aries and Libra are something called cardinal signs. And the cardinal signs talk about new beginnings, they talk about new seasons, but they also, in the case of Aries and Libra, the axis of relationship. In order for the eclipses to happen in Pisces and Virgo, the lunar nodes have to be in Pisces and Virgo, and that happened on January 11th. So the lunar nodes, they move slowly. They take about 18 months to cross from one end of the zodiac to another, but they go backwards. So the lunar nodes, they are, goodness, I don't even know the degree, probably around 27 degrees of Pisces Virgo, right? Square my moon. But they move so slowly, but they go backwards. And so we are starting, let's say, from the end of Pisces and going to the beginning of Pisces. And then the South Node is exactly opposite. So we're going from the end of Virgo all the way to the beginning of Virgo. And then in 2026, I forget when, I think it's in the middle of 2026, the eclipses will go into not Leo, Aquarius, Aquarius and Leo. But we're not there yet. But the lunar nodes, apart from being a mathematical point in the sky, symbolically speaking, they talk about a path that time takes. Whether it's a path that time takes collectively, a path that time takes in your life, and even your own lunar nodes, because in your astrology, the lunar nodes were in two signs when you were born, and that is the path that time will take in your life. So a lot of events typically line up around those nodes. And even though the nodes might be in different signs than when you were born, not for me, my north node is in Virgo, my south node is in Pisces, so I'm having a nodal opposition. But these are two signs that typically we will see, even if you don't have your nodes there, events are following along that path. Eclipses are the engine of time. Astrology is just about telling time. I know it's fun to talk about personality types and make memes. Again, that's fun. But in reality, it's how time unfolds and how time builds in your life. And time is an energy. And so one of the ways in which time is expressing itself right now is through the signs of Virgo and Pisces. These two signs of the zodiac are what I call the helping and healing signs. We have the North Node in Pisces. It's not to say that Pisces is true north. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. But to go from Virgo, Pisces, just roughly as a direction, means that we need to sort of make a leap, because Virgo is rational, analytical, tangible. Things have to add up. It is the real world. But Pisces, it's dreams, it's intuition, it's also what's beyond this world, whether it's, again, our dreams or even our spirituality. So it's not to say that we need to go, put all our chips on Pisces, but I think it's always to find the balance between the two. And in a way, because Pisces is heaven, to find the balance between heaven and earth, Virgo. And don't forget that Virgo is an earth sign. And so we will be sort of living out these two signs on a dominant level for the next 15, 16 months at this point. So an eclipse in Virgo, which don't forget, a lunar eclipse is just simply a full moon. A full moon happens to be in alignment with the lunar nodes. A lunar eclipse in Virgo could quite simply be that this is a time for you to really prioritize Virgo as a sign and an archetype. Virgo, practicality, groundedness, order, structure, cleanliness. There's a sense of health and wellness, but and also hygiene with Virgo. And so maybe you need to look at your own health or look at your own health and wellness sort of as a larger lens. Virgo makes things very real. And this season, certainly throughout March and even February, you've had a lot of planets in Pisces. Pisces can feel like a dream. It can feel very liminal. It can feel like the Twilight Zone. But Virgo can be a dose of reality. Like, this is where we're at. It can be a measure and a marker, and especially with the lunar eclipse opposite Saturn. So in addition this week to our lunar eclipse in Virgo on March 14th, primarily the whole world will be March 14th. It'll be at 2:55 Eastern Daylight Time here on the East Coast of the United States. But for the rest of the world, it's at different times. But sorry, I lost my train of thought because my dad's in the microwave. But anyway, yeah. So we have this lunar eclipse, and this lunar eclipse is also opposite Saturn. So before I get too far, just to reintroduce myself, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium located here presently in Maryland. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology, whether it is an eclipse, whether it is a full moon, whether it is something else. And as you heard me say in the introduction, astrology is just time, and it's the energy of time. But as you hear me say every week, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. So to go back to this lunar eclipse in Virgo, how will you use it? It's, on one hand, we can't necessarily use an eclipse because an eclipse really talks about these bigger forces than us. They talk about the major marks and milestones, these different chapters of time. But on some level, you may be seeing Virgo subliminally, I can't say that word, Virgo showing up in your life on a subconscious level. That's better, subconscious level. Maybe you're thinking about changing your diet. Maybe you're thinking about getting more exercise. Maybe you're thinking about cutting something out. Maybe you're thinking about sobriety. These are all Virgo things. And Virgo also likes things to add up. It likes things neat and tidy and organized. Maybe you're like, you know what, maybe I should like clean out my fridge. Maybe I should clean out the house. And it's not just spring or fall cleaning, depending on where you are in the world. I realize we are an international audience, and I know that Australia and Queensland just went through a cyclone, so I hope everybody is well. So Virgo is about really putting things into perspective. Sometimes we think of it, Virgo is health and wellness, but it's also systems. Meaning, I'll give you a really simple example. I moved in June of 2024, and in reality, I actually even moved in June of 2021. And when you move, you need to remake your systems. What does that mean? Okay, where's my grocery store? How am I going to get, especially if it's out of state or out of town, how am I going to get the things that I need to get? How do I reorganize my home? And maybe the things that made sense in your old environment and the old systems don't make sense in your new environment. It sounds very basic and day-to-day, but Virgo, this is not a dig, but it can be a bit of a basic sign. And I actually really love Virgo. It's not just because it's my North Node, because it's a sign that really helps us to make things happen and to get things done. If you want something done, mark my words, ask a Virgo, and they will do it, and they will do it very well. So this is a week and even a season when we are trying to bring more Virgo energy into our life, practical, grounded, and real. And then the irony to all of this is that we have the Sun, Saturn, and Neptune in Pisces. Pisces is not real, it's not grounded. And Pisces, by its nature, is outside of this world, as you heard me say earlier. So let's go back. Let's go back to March 12th, which is in a couple of days, but we're feeling it already. So on March 12th, the sun, every year, the sun makes something called a conjunction to Saturn. It just means that the sun and Saturn are in the same place in the sky. Over the past 3 years, Saturn has been in Pisces, but it was only last year, so probably in February, March, I'd have to look at the calendar, we had a Sun-Saturn conjunction in Pisces. I think it was like 12 or 14 of Pisces. And then this year, we have another Sun-Saturn conjunction also in Pisces. This year, it will be 22 Pisces. Next year, it will be in Aries, because by then I think we'll be fully in the sun in Saturn in Aries, but don't quote me on that. But my point is that since March of 2023, Saturn has been in Pisces. And while I spoke a little bit about the eclipse, we can't forget that Saturn has been in Pisces since March 6th or 7th, I can't remember, of 2023. Why is Saturn so important? And if you watch me, you know that I love Saturn. You're like, why do you love Saturn so much, Katie? It's like the planet of time and teeth and bones and structure. That doesn't sound very sexy. But for me as an astrologer, Saturn really shows something. And maybe this is, again, the kind of the Virgo side of me, even though I'm a Scorpio, but we need that sort of something to hold on to sometimes in astrology. So Saturn is this planet that will take 29.5 years to go through the zodiac. And for those that know, age 29 is something called the Saturn return, the first Saturn return. Another conversation for another time. If Saturn takes 29.5 years to go around the sun, it takes 29.5 years to go through the entirety of the zodiac, and it will spend about 3 years in each of the 12 zodiac signs. And if astrology is about time, then Saturn is about the different major hours. So if I'm looking at a clock face, and it's astrology, it's an astrology clock face, and Saturn is like the major hand. Well, along with eclipses, Saturn, they like weave our reality. Saturn and the eclipses are like the needle and the thread. They really put things together. And so wherever Saturn is in our life, and this is, I am a consulting astrologer, some of you are my clients, and Saturn is one of the first things I focus on. Where is Saturn right now? Where was Saturn when you were born? Because where Saturn is right now tells me where a lot of focus is happening in your life, a lot of work, perhaps major milestones, and depending on your age, it could be connected to a much bigger story, especially if you're in the second Saturn return, 57, 58, 59, even the Saturn opposition, 44, 45, 46. So again, big conversation, but for each of you in your own time to sort of reflect back on the past couple of years. It's not to sort of look at, on a broader level like the past couple of years, but where has a lot of the action been happening? Is it about family and the home? Is it about career? Is it about relationships? And wherever Saturn is, we need to learn something. Sometimes it is to do a great work. It depends on the person that we are. If we don't have a good relationship with Saturn, typically we don't have a great relationship with boundaries, time, showing up, commitment, following through. Again, we're all human beings, but Saturn is there to help us to find our maturity, to find commitment, to really create that stable stability. And Saturn is very much a part of our material world. And when you look back at your life, especially if you plot out the Saturn movements in the astrology, you will see major milestones in your life. So this week, the Sun and Saturn come together in Pisces. And so it's a week to really gain a lens on what this Saturn and Pisces time has been about. Time builds in a predictable fashion, whether it's the new moon, the full moon, eclipses every 6 months. Saturn went into Pisces in March of 2023. It turned retrograde in June 2023. It went back direct in November 2023. It turned retrograde end of June, almost July of 2024. It turned direct again in November 15th of 2024. So events, whether they are internal, personal, emotional, or external in your life, we're building around those points. And it's for you to sort of see like how those points connect together, because they do, even if it's quiet, even if it's internal. One of the hard things about Saturn and Pisces, why is Saturn and Pisces a little bit hard? Because Pisces is a water sign. Water cannot be accountable, it can't be accounted, like it's not tangible, it's not physical, it's emotional. And certainly with Pisces, it's spiritual, it's existential. And so what we've been learning maybe hasn't, we can't see it. We can't see it externally. It depends on the person. Maybe we've had to really build something emotionally and perhaps even spiritually over the past couple of years. And why I think sometimes Saturn and Pisces is one of the more difficult places for Saturn to be is because what we're building, it's to find peace. It's to find compassion. How do we find peace and compassion? It's not because everything is easy, and sometimes that's the hardest thing to find within ourselves. So Saturn will actually begin to leave Pisces this year, and that's a big, circle that date in your astrology calendar, because Saturn makes its first arrival in Aries on May 24th, 2025. And then the big hand on the clock will begin to move and point towards another hour, another conversation for another time. But in the meantime, we have a rendezvous, so to speak, with Saturn this week. How are we doing? It's not to sort of look at it as a measure, like a yardstick or a metric stick. And sometimes Saturn can make us feel like we're not doing enough or we're being hypercritical. It's not that Saturn's really honestly doing anything. It's just an energy, and that reveals something inside of us. It reveals the inner critic. It reveals the part of us that doesn't think we're doing enough. But for some, this is a week where the hard work begins to become something, because Saturn is teeth and bone, Saturn is structure, and Saturn is how time becomes something. It becomes real. It becomes maturity. It becomes a title after your name, even if that title is parent, even that title is CEO. And so this could be a week of becoming, you after your hard work starting to become something. People see you as something. Saturn is accountability, even if it's, we embody that accountability. My joke about Saturn is that it can be the life coach, the parents, or the cops. And so to have a rendezvous with Saturn this week is to sort of be like, how am I doing with Saturn? Did somebody call the cops? No, I'm just joking. But use Saturn to reach towards your goals. But certainly if you're going through a Saturn transit, if you are 28, 29, 30, if you are 44, 45, 46, call me. If you are 57, 58, 59, even 60, the incline of life might be a bit like this at the moment, because you're going through a Saturn transit. This is the things that we all go through at the same ages. So yeah, that Sun-Saturn conjunction will be on Wednesday, March 12th, and it's just to listen to it, feel for it, sit with it, reflect on the path that your life has taken since March 2023, the things that you have achieved, the things that you still want to achieve, the things that need to be restructured. And because Pisces is Pisces, this has fallen along a deeper or existential bend, so to speak. Why am I here? What am I doing? What is this all for? What is the meaning and purpose of my life? These are the questions that typically Pisces will ask. And then this leads us up again to our eclipse this week. Against the backdrop of all these existential questions and the energy of Saturn and like building your life and peace and compassion, Virgos really makes something real. You want this? Okay, this is what you need to do. You need to show up. You need to get up on time. You need to make a list. I know I'm saying need, but Virgo is an earth sign, and the full moon eclipse is opposite Saturn. Saturn is definitely like dun 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 dun. And then we have the energy of the eclipse pointing over towards Mars and not Mars, Mercury and Aries. So because Mercury rules the eclipse, wherever Mercury is, it receives the energy of the eclipse. So Mercury right now is about 9 or 10. I have my calendar here. Mercury is presently at 8 degrees, and by the time of the lunar eclipse, Mercury will be at, I don't have it close by. Mercury, I think, will be at about 9 or 10 degrees of Aries. And so Aries receives the energy, and you're like, but I'm not an Aries. How is this important to me? Because Aries is an energy and archetype. So Aries is new beginnings, taking action. It corresponds with the energy of the first of spring. Even if you are in Australia or you're in the southern hemisphere, it's still that archetype of the first of spring. So it's new beginnings, new leaves, new chapters. So the eclipse is pointing over to Aries, and it's saying on some level, whatever is relevant to your life, of course, it is time to take action. It is time to turn over another leaf. It is time to get real, but also to do something about it, because Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars is certainly a planet that does something about it. So whatever it is in your life, of course, you know what's going on in your life. And curiously, and maybe this is the universe kind of throwing us a bone a little bit, Mercury does turn retrograde on the 15th. That's not to say that Mercury stops working as a planet or an archetype. No, it takes on a yin energy, a yin phase receptivity to listen more to our intuition, and perhaps not to be so hot-headed, impulsive, or impatient with that Aries energy. In 2 weeks' time, I'm jumping ahead, but just to put it on your radar, we will have another eclipse. This will be a solar eclipse at 9 degrees of Aries. There's that sign again ruled by Mars, action, drive, turning new leaf. And this is an energy, because a solar eclipse takes us into the next 6 months, that will be the predominant archetype for the next 6 months. And then we have Saturn going to Aries on May 24th. We have even Neptune going into Aries for the first time in 150 years on March 30th. So that this month. So Aries is an archetype we will have to come back to. Right now the sun is in Pisces. We're coming to the end of the astrological year. We are in a period of bridge between one chapter and another, one life and another, one breath and another. And so maybe as we get past these eclipses, some things will begin to come into focus. If you want a deeper dive on the eclipses, I did a webinar that was almost 3 hours. So you don't have to watch all 3 hours, but it is about an hour and a half of really talking about eclipses on a deeper level, both on a practical level, on a spiritual level, and then also a sign-by-sign guide, so you can really get a sense of what these eclipses will mean for each of your sign. So link is in the show notes, or you can go to empoweringastrology.com. So having said all that, that is your look at the astrology of this week, March 10th through 16th, 2025. And we will now go through each of the signs to really talk very briefly about Saturn and also the eclipses. So let's start with Aries. So Aries, we are just about to have an eclipse, not just the eclipse that will be on March 29th. So if your birthday is March 29th, plus or minus a couple of days, you are about to step into a big new year that could be a time of dynamic new beginnings, for example. That said, the Virgo eclipse really puts the spotlight on health and wellness and needing to do something about it. The energy of the eclipse points back to you because Mercury is in Aries. So this is not a theoretical eclipse. It's not like coming up with a plan and just the plan sitting there. There's something about this eclipse that's really talking about taking action. That said, it's still Pisces season. Pisces is still the sign that comes before your sign, so it represents something called your 12th sign. And Saturn has been there since March of 2023. Of course, every Aries will live this time differently, but the sort of the basic idea is that over the past 2 years, you've needed to clean things out. The 12th is a space where my joke is it's like, you need to sort of go through the boxes. You need to figure out what you're going to bring with you into this next cycle of your life. And I said that once to a client, and he's like, I'm literally cleaning out the boxes in my garage from the last 30 years, from the last move. So use this eclipse to clean out. Use this eclipse to get real. Be conscientious about the things that you want to bring with you into 2025. I mean, 2025, your personal year, and things that you don't want to bring with you. For some Aries, this is very much about health and wellness. You can use this eclipse to end an addiction, quit smoking, quit drinking, whatever you want to do, whatever's right for you, of course. This also could be a lunar eclipse that really puts a health matter in a spotlight. We will see. But this is not a quiet time to be an Aries, even though the energy of Pisces right now is saying rest, relax, and maybe you need to get to your season before things really start to amp up and take you in a new direction. That said, I will say that the eclipse, just to give you a little bit of a preview of the solar eclipse in Aries on March 29th, that eclipse is actually square Mars. So it just says that April is not going to be a quiet time. If you need to take a rest right now with the sun in Pisces, do that. Meditate to let things go, because life will start to get a bit loud. Taurus, Venus is your planet, and it's currently retrograde. So this is just this 40-day period from March 1st until April 12th, where you are walking back on something. It's part of this period where every sign, every planet in the sky, except for the sun and moon, turns retrograde. So this just happens to be your period to go inward, to reflect, to listen to your intuition, to be in that energy of the yin energy, which is about the past. It is about sorting through the past and memories. Venus is in Aries. And so for you, this is kind of taking on even a deeper level, because Aries is something called your 12th sign. The 12th sign is saying that this is a period not just to reflect, but to soul search, to go within, to rest, to ask yourself bigger questions. All of this is in advance of a solar eclipse in Aries that will be in 2 weeks' time. But this is still a week of what's called Sun conjunct Saturn. You do have this period to really look towards the future, to make plans, to sort of set things more concretely. I don't want to say completely in stone, because Saturn will come back to this space. But it is a time where something wants to become more real for you. Then we have the lunar eclipse this week, and it puts you in the spotlight, in the sense like the things that light you up, the things that give you joy, the things that you create. It could be children, it could be a lunar eclipse plus Sun and Saturn that's talking about family in the future, or the direction that you're going with your family. And of course, this is not going to be relevant to everybody. But this lunar eclipse talks about even identity, like who are you? And who you are is not your friends, it's not your past, it's not your experiences, it's the things that come out of you when you're doing the things that you love. So having said that, with Venus retrograde until April 12th, it is a undoing something. It is a walking, retracing a path. It is going back to Pisces, which you will, I think, later in March. But there's something about community that's very highlighted at this time, your friends, your social circle, and maybe just thinking on a bigger, deeper level about what you want your place to be in the world. Gemini, Mercury is your planet, and it's about to turn retrograde. So it turns retrograde every three months. So that's not out of the usual. But what is kind of not unusual per se, but is important to understand, is that Mercury, your planet, is the ruler of the eclipse on March 14th. So this eclipse will be at 23 degrees of Virgo. Virgo is your sign of home and family, roots, foundation. It is both the physicality of home and where you live, your household, but also the emotionality and the internality of home. This lunar eclipse is creating movement. And sometimes movement, quite literally, is a move. And so maybe you are planning a move or thinking about a move. It could be a necessary emotional movement because this helps you prepare for some sort of next big chapter of your life. This lunar eclipse is pointing towards your 11th. Mercury is in the 11th right now. So whether you are thinking about the future, trying to hope and dream of the direction that you want to take your life in, or maybe it's about connection and belonging, both belonging on a home level, a family level, but also belonging on a friends, social circle, and even community level. This might be a lunar eclipse where it is activating very dynamic energies in your chart, including Saturn in your 10th. So this continues to be a time for Gemini to ask itself, what does it want to be when it grows up? And this lunar eclipse is sort of pressing that question again. What do you want to be when you grow up? Gemini, you've had Saturn in your career sign of Pisces since March of 2023. The bar continues to be set higher for you. I'm sure you are stepping up into it. You're sort of holding yourself up to that standard. And that's what that's what Saturn does. This week might be a week of personal milestones, perhaps even events. And some of those events might be taking place in your professional life, your public life, even your public reputation. But this is a pivot point, and this is all preparing you for the solar eclipse and lunar eclipse to come actually in September of 2025, because those eclipses will be the first eclipses that activate Uranus and Gemini. Uranus doesn't go into Gemini until July 7th, but it is a big deal, capital B underscore, capital D underscore big deal, because it will be the start of some sort of major shift and chapter in your life. Cancer, the moon is your planet, and this week we've got a lunar eclipse, and you probably know by now that a lunar eclipse is just a full moon that lines up with the ecliptic. The moon is going from Leo all the way, I think it's to Libra this week, so that is taking you from your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security, all the way to Libra, which is your sign of home and family, roots, and foundation. That said, a lunar eclipse in Virgo, in a way, puts you in the spotlight because you are ruled by the moon. And maybe you will feel this more strongly than your average person just because you are ruled by the moon. But this lunar eclipse will be in something called your third. The third is, and along with the ninth, because they're part of an axis in our astrology, it's two signs, two spaces that are trying to help us to understand our world. So the third is more about taking classes, education, learning, books, writing, speaking, communication. The ninth, even though the eclipse is not in the ninth, Saturn's there, the sun is there, Neptune is there right now. And the ninth is more about what do all these classes, what do all these words, what do all these books mean? Does it mean that you get a higher degree? Does it mean that you believe in a certain thing that you believe in? Typically, the ninth wants us to find answers outside of us. It wants us to travel, to seek, to explore. It's the space of higher education. It's also the space of religion and philosophy and law. So these two spaces are being activated, but namely the lunar eclipse is activating something called the third. And so the third is also information and ideas and even choices. This might be a week where you need to make a choice. You need to make a choice that might speak about some sort of philosophy that you have, some belief, some conviction that you have. And this lunar eclipse is pointing towards Aries. And Aries is your career sign. And so this is a choice that could affect your career. This is a choice that could affect your relationship with duties and responsibilities. Even though this eclipse is not pressing on major things in your astrology, it is on some level talking about relationships. And in advance of the solar eclipse that's on March 29th, it is talking about your career. So March and April could be, like a career shift. It doesn't mean that you change your industry or you change your job, but there might be a lot of things happening in that part of your life. Don't forget, Cancer, you continue to have Mars in your sign. Mars is not a diplomat when it's in our sign. We typically feel more motivated, inspired. There's a fire that's lit under us, but sometimes it's more about our wants and our needs and not the needs of other people. So there's a lot of buttons that are being pushed right now, and those buttons may be pushing you to take action and to really maybe fight what you believe in, or to sort of make some decisions, some concrete decisions about the direction that you want to take your life or take your career. But this is a big time for you, Cancer. Leo. So the sun is your planet, and the sun right now is in something called your eighth. And we've been talking about this, but this is important to sort of go back to it. So since March of 2023, Saturn has been in your eighth. I'm going to be honest, and I'm sure I've said this before, Saturn in the eighth is not the easiest of transits, and I honestly think it's one of the harder ones. Just real talk. Why is it hard? Because what Saturn is sort of mirroring, I was going to say doing, but the planets aren't really doing anything. They're really sort of mirroring a time for something where we need to do a lot of emotional heavy lifting. So I will give you an example, Leo. If you're the type that takes all of your feelings and pushes them deep down inside of you, then here, Saturn has been in this space with you since 2023. And Saturn's like, look, there are all these feelings that are stuffed way down inside of you. Let me help. Maybe that's not you. Maybe you've used this time to do a lot of inner work, to work with a counselor or a psychotherapist, maybe, or on your own. But this is this time where a lot of emotional and spiritual alchemy takes place. The eighth is traditionally a space of wealth. And maybe this time has been about assets and finances and wealth and the things that you have and the things that you don't have. But the real wealth of the eighth is the work that we do and the things, the currency, the gold, so to speak, that comes out of this inner work, because that is what you take with you. Meaning you take that with you through every moment of your life and even beyond this life. The material stuff stays here. The inner work, the spiritual work, goes with you. That's one way to frame the eighth. Now, Saturn's going to start to go out of the eighth on May 24th. And so from May 24th to September 1st, you are sort of pointing towards this space that's more about faith and truth and me. Like, what do I believe in? What do I stand for? And that is born out of your time in the eighth. So I wanted to say this because this lunar eclipse, even though it's not in the eighth, it is activating that Sun-Saturn conjunction in the eighth. This deep inner work and need to make a decision to know your value and worth, to find that inner stability in yourself, to rediscover your power, for example. And again, maybe on a more of a material level, this eclipse is about money and income, assets and property, and needing to make some decisions and maybe purchasing something, maybe purchasing property or a home, or maybe needing to clean some things out on the money and income level. That said, this eclipse is pointing towards Mercury in Aries. Aries is your ninth. So even if it is about money, because the ninth and even the solar eclipse on the 29th is going to be in Aries in the ninth as well, this is bringing up a lot of bigger points of view and, like, again, what I believe in, what I stand for, what's my view of the world. Like, I'm searching for answers, seeking for wisdom and knowledge, and maybe this is sort of getting into these big themes about, like, what is the value of the work that I've done, or what is the value of seeking and searching for answers. So the ninth is not material, it's not concrete, and yet this eclipse is pointing towards material and concrete things. But it just shows that there's going to be some sort of intersection for you to find some balance between your material life, but also the things that are your truth, your faith, and your convictions. Virgo, Mercury is your planet, but let's talk about that lunar eclipse in Virgo. So it puts you in the spotlight. It is a big D, big deal, because it's not very often that we have an eclipse in our sign or our rising sign. The last time was 2015 and 16, and before that would have been 2006, 2007, before that would have been 1997, 1998, before that would have been 1988, 89, before that would have been 1978. in 1979. I don't need to go back further than that. But even if you look back 9 years ago, 8, 9 years ago, you might start to see little like parallels or themes. And even if it's not obvious, sit with it, feel for it, because it's there. So it says that on some level, it is going to be a dynamic time in your life. Things are happening. It is not quiet. I'm so sorry, Virgo. And this lunar eclipse, while it puts you in the spotlight, it moves the energy from you or your first action, taking action, moving a certain direction, new beginnings, but also moving it towards the 8th. New beginnings and things happening in our life can sometimes bring up a lot of deep emotions. Am I safe? Can I move forward? That sort of insecurity that we all have inside of us. The 8th is a space where we do our inner work. It is sitting and talking to somebody that we trust. It is sharing our feelings and sharing, our sometimes most vulnerable and intimate feelings. And so there is this connection between power and personal power, how you inhabit your power, and perhaps even either your relationship with power or how people have had power over you in the past. This eclipse pairs off of Saturn and Pisces. We've talked about this quite a bit at this point, but the last 2 years have been about relationship. I know people say, but wait a second, Katie, I'm single. But unless you are living in the woods and you have zero internet, how are you watching this? You have some form of relationship, because why? Humans are social creatures. We are hardwired to connect, to relate, to interact. This eclipse is also reminding you that you can't do life alone. Even as capable as you are, Virgo, you cannot do it alone. It is to either ask for help or to delegate. It is to have that balance in your life. So for some of you, it's not about relationships. It could be lowercase r relationships, meaning your how you relate to other people, how you socialize, and how you interact. And you're like, shoot, I actually do need to have more balance in my life. I can't do it all because, I'm not perfect. I know, Virgo, you're not perfect, but nobody is. So for some of you, this eclipse is about relationships, capital R relationships, the major relationships in your life, whether it is to start a relationship or whether it is to end a relationship, or it means a page turns in a relationship. Relationships very often bring up power dynamics. It is a dance between you and a partner. Even if, again, you're not in a relationship, there's a relationship. It could be a boss, it could be a friend, it could be a parent. Again, you have some form of relationship in your life. And that's where we sometimes have to do the dance. And Virgo, its instinct sometimes is to serve, but also to give everything away. And Virgo needs to sometimes set healthy boundaries. And I think that's even with Neptune and Pisces as well. Like, how do you set healthy boundaries? Because you can't do everything unless you take care of yourself first. So that's where it can be bringing up a lot of that deeper emotion, that deeper revelation, and maybe even seeing something about yourself that is necessary. But again, relationships and whatever form that takes in your life. And it is saying that this is a big dynamic time in your life, Virgo. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and we've been talking about this. Venus has been retrograde since March 1st, and it will be retrograde until April 12th. So the energy of your sign always will follow what Venus is doing. So right now it's in Aries, your 7th sign of relationship. So the energy of your sign in your life is pointing over towards other people. And I'll say this to you, like I said it to Virgo. Even if you are single, unless you are sitting in the woods with no internet and living completely off the grid, then of course, how are you watching this? You have some form of relationship. So for some Libras, this is about capital R relationship. It is the people, your partner, the person that you live with. It is the person that you want to build a life with. But for a lot of you, it's not. It's how do you interact, how do you socialize, and how you connect. And Venus retrograde is saying that this is a time where there needs to be a work. A retrograde isn't a fate. It's not where your life comes to a screeching halt and you do nothing for 40 days. It is a yin energy, and it is a yin expression of Venus and Aries, and Aries is typically a yang energy. Aries is like, let's go, let's do. But Venus right now needs to sort of reflect and go within and even look at something from the past. So for some of you, it's relationship, capital R relationship, but it's something that connects to the past. For some of you, it's lowercase r relationship, and it's like, oh, these are my past patterns, or maybe somebody from the past is resurfacing. Venus also gets into themes about value and worth. What is my value within my relationship? What is my value to another person? And do I value myself? All of this is in advance of a solar eclipse in Aries on March 29th, and even Saturn's arrival in Aries on May 24th. So relationships are going to continue to be a major focus in your life. Again, Libra, you teach the world as a sign that we're not meant to do life alone. We need help, we need to delegate, but at the same time, it is to put everything in balance, even your relationships. If it's all about some other person and it's what they want and it's not about your needs and your desires, then this eclipse is also talking about putting things back into balance. The lunar eclipse on the 14th is putting your 12th sign in the spotlight. The 12th is inherently about endings, release, letting go. It is the sign that comes to the end of your personal zodiac calendar. And for some of you, this is the need to let something go. This is going to, of course, be relevant in your own life. It's to sort of feel for what that is. It could be a belief. It could be a dynamic that you have with a partner. It could be something from the past that you've been holding on to. Maybe you just need to use this eclipse to meditate and to reflect, because there is this direct connection between the 12th and the 7th, because Mercury is pointing over towards your relationships. So use this to either reestablish order, to put things in balance, to see something for what it is, to have no illusions, but also to of course, be of service to the relationships that we need to be of service to, and to help the people that we need to help. This continues to be a time for some Libras where it is about health and wellness. It's to take care of your body, but I think with these eclipses, it's also to take care of yourself, body, mind, and soul. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet. It's still hanging out in Cancer. It'll be in Cancer until April 18th. So we've got this sort of double water signature. You are a water sign. Cancer is a water sign. And this Mars in Cancer is pulling the energy of your sign towards something called the ninth. The ninth is not a very concrete place. It's more philosophical. It's like, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What are your convictions? It's about truth and meaning. For some Scorpios, this is about sharing your opinions. Maybe it's not so diplomatic, but for some Scorpios, this is to broadcast something, to share something, to, in your highest of highs, to be the torch, because that's the highest expression of the ninth. It is to take your experiences and your discoveries and to use them as a torch for people, to inspire them, to motivate them. This could be a time where you quite simply are publishing something and sharing something, for example. Then there's this eclipse, and this eclipse puts the spotlight on Virgo. Virgo is your 11th sign. This is our first eclipse in Virgo since 2015 and 16. This is about your friends, your community, your social circle, but also your place in the world. What's your role in the world? Like, do you feel that you belong? And for some Scorpios, it's about a social issue, a social cause, or something humanitarian in nature. All of this is playing off of Saturn's time in something called your fifth. And Saturn, since 2023, has been saying to Scorpio, it's time to take yourself and take your talents seriously. And so this could be a lunar eclipse that's taking that energy of the fifth and sharing it, broadcasting it. Maybe it's, again, is to share your faith, your truth, your meaning with love, of course, but it's also to share yourself with the world. It is both the 9th and the 11th, but the 10th as well, are the three most public places in our astrology. So this eclipse, and even the eclipses to come over the next couple of years, are putting you out into the public life. The eclipses in Libra, like we were having 2023 and 4, are not public. They're internal. It's the 12th. It's quiet. This eclipse, I think more with the solar eclipse in Aries on the 29th. That's a bigger one for you because it is putting, it's sort of bringing your Mars into the mix, and it's saying that April and perhaps even May are going to be dynamic times for you. Sagittarius, a lot is going on in your astrology. I know I've been saying this for a while now, but it's important to just sort of recap. You've got stuff basically going on in the major areas of your life. I talked about this more in my eclipse webinar, but here's the basic concept. Life follows a square pattern. You're like, what are you talking about, Kate? Just give me my horoscope. Our life follows a square pattern, and so you are like one part of the square, one corner, and then 3 months later is another part of the corner. 3 months later after that is another part of the corner, and 3 months that is another part of the corner. And this cross really talks about the 4 directions of your life. And so when the 4 directions are very active, it typically is capital L life. It's about you, it's about relationships, it's about your living situation, home, and family. It's about your career. And there just continues to be a lot of energy, a lot of push, a lot of friction for something to really root and ground and take shape and form at this time in your life, whether it's a relationship or whether it's relationships in general, to form connections and bonds, or whether it is to Saturn is still in your 4th. Where is home and who is home? This continues to be a time to put down roots. This Sun-Saturn conjunction this week is a major stepping stone in a story that has been with you since 2023. Then there's this lunar eclipse. This lunar eclipse puts the spotlight on your career, whether it's career in general, whether it's your public life, your public reputation, but a lunar eclipse is typically visible when it's in the 10th. This could talk about pivot points, turning points, and the energy of this eclipse points towards Mercury in Aries. Aries is something called your 5th sign. So this is a lunar eclipse that's talking about you, your talents, your gifts, your abilities, whether it's putting your talents, gifts, and abilities out there in the world. For some, a small subset of Sagittarian rising, it is about children. It is perhaps starting a family, taking on the role of a parent, but of course that is a very small subset. I mention that just because life, capital L life, includes the major themes, relationships, births, marriages, moves, career, and that's sort of the things, the boxes that are being ticked right now for Sagittarius. This is all in advance of Mercury turning retrograde. That's not a fate. It just says that you've got this period into about the middle of April where you need to review something on your professional level. You need to review something with a relationship. And this is going to bring the energy of the eclipse a little bit further, even into April. I forget the date that Mercury turns direct. I know it's the middle of April, but it could mean that something about this eclipse really manifests in the middle of April. Capricorn, Saturn is your planet. And while this eclipse is not in your sign, nor really one of your major signs, in a way, it brings you into the mix because this eclipse is opposite you. This eclipse, Virgo is something called an earth sign. You're an earth sign. And this puts a lot of energy into something called your 9th. The 9th isn't a concrete place, at least not typically. It's what we believe in, it's what we stand for, it's our faith, it's our truth, it's our meaning. And it's a space that really leads us out into the world to discover things, to make our world bigger. So this eclipse on some level is asking you, Capricorn, to make your world bigger, to either figure out what you believe in and what you stand for, to touch on a matter of faith, to share your ideas, your vision, your truth out in the world, or maybe to make a decision about your education or make a decision about a foreign trip or a long distance journey, for example. I said earlier that this eclipse is not about you, but you get roped into it because this eclipse is opposite Saturn. So this brings to a head a story about you that has been working its way since March of 2023. Saturn both rules you, but Saturn also sets the time for everybody's chart. And since March of 2023, it's been about education. Whether you have been taking classes, you have been learning, filling your mind with new ideas, new perspectives. For some of you, it's been about movement and travel. And for some of you, it is those things, but it's also choice. What choices are you making? And this is a space where we experience both the duality of life, but also the responsibility of choice. And so this eclipse is saying, on some level, what are you choosing, Capricorn? Is it a this way or that way, an up way or a down way? It is a yes or it is a no. But this eclipse is also marking some sort of process of maturity and growth that has, for some, been about education, been about truth, been about meaning, been about faith. This is in 2 weeks before a solar eclipse in Aries. That's a bigger eclipse in your astrology. That's saying that, especially as we get into the next couple of years, that home and family, your living situation, will be a major priority even into 2028. I know. It's not just the eclipse, it's also Saturn, your planet, going into Aries on May 24th. And that's talking about how the middle of this year, June, July, and August, are shift points for you. But that said, maybe going back to that eclipse, is it a yes or a no? Is it a this way or that way? And maybe this eclipse is preparing you for the bigger changes to come in the middle of this year and even in 2026 and 2027. Aquarius, Saturn is your planet, and it continues to be in your second sign, money, income, material stability, and security, whether this has literally been about a time about your material life or been more in sort of the philosophical value and worth. What's my value? What's my worth? Hopefully at this point, it's become obvious what this time is, because it's been 2 years of Saturn in your second. You will have a personal shift in your time when Saturn goes into Aries this year, even if it's just for a few months, starting on May 24th. So June, July, and August is sort of this preview of a new chapter in your life. That said, this lunar eclipse puts the spotlight in an indirect way on you, but it's in something called your eighth. What's the eighth? Well, in our astrology, there are these 12 spaces. These 12 spaces, these 12 domains talk about different parts of our life. The eighth is a space where we have to face ourselves. You're like, I don't want to face myself, Katie, but that's the thing. The role of the eighth is to say, unless we look at ourselves, we question ourselves, we look within, we do the work, we get into those emotionally uncomfortable spaces, we do not grow. So this is a lunar eclipse that's trying to promote some sort of personal growth and transformation. Now, for some Aquariuses, to go back to money and property and assets, it really is about money. It's about the things that you own, the property, the assets, your estate planning. I know that sounds very grim, but I'm a Scorpio. Let's talk about estate planning. So what's going to happen for the future, to make these plans for the future? But for a lot of Aquarians, it's not necessarily about that. It's about that emotional intimacy, that emotional vulnerability. And the energy of this eclipse is pointing towards Mercury in Aries. Aries is something called your third sign. Am I doing that correctly? Yes. So this could be a lunar eclipse that brings news, brings information, brings new perspectives, brings reality. And because this eclipse is opposite you, it might be a dynamic time in your life, and something where maybe you do need to make a decision. Maybe you do need to turn a page. Maybe you do need to move on. But it's bringing up a lot of things, and I would probably say, because Saturn doesn't just rule you, but this is even preparing you for the solar eclipse that will happen in Aries on March 29th, and how that eclipse is about this sort of showing you where this shift is beginning to happen in 2025 and 6 when Saturn goes into Aries. But it could be a big week for you, Aquarius, and just use this time to really check in with yourself and to have a lot of emotional supports for yourself. Finally, Pisces. Happy birthday, Pisces. There's a lot going on in your astrology, capital L life, at least on paper, according to the astrology. So it is your season. You continue to have Saturn in your sign. So this continues to be a 3-year period, 2023, 2024, and 2025, that's really trying to shape you. It's trying to get you to stand on your own 2 feet, to sort of grow up and to step into the next phase and chapter of your life. Now, this eclipse this week is not in Pisces, but it's opposite you. And it's also square Jupiter, which it rules you. And so it brings the energy of your sign over to Jupiter and Gemini. There's something about this eclipse. Again, on paper, this could be a turning point for you, a time where you need to make a decision. You need to get real. This lunar eclipse puts the spotlight on relationship. And I know people are like, well, what if I'm single? This could be a time where a relationship comes in, or you need to look at relationships on sort of a broader level. Because we don't live in isolation, we need to make sure that we have people in our life. So if you are in isolation, especially Saturn just really putting a lot of weight on your shoulders at the moment, how do you distribute that energy? How do you make connection? How do you share with people and delegate and use this energy even to build and to construct the next big chapter of your life? And all of this is in advance of the bigger eclipses to come in September of 2023 for you. There will be an eclipse in Pisces on September 7th and an eclipse in Virgo, September 21st. And so August and even September will be big months for you, because these will be months that activate the energy of Uranus and Gemini. So all of this is in advance of some bigger pivot points in July, August, and September. Having said that, it's just a lot that's going on in your astrology, so use this accordingly. If you need to reach out to a friend or make connections, focus on relationships, then all means. If you need to take care of yourself, get your needs met, then by all means. But when you look back at your life, the last time we had eclipses in Pisces and Virgo was 2016 and 2015. And so think back to that time, and maybe even think back, if we go back further, to 2006, 2007, because whatever is happening, even though it'll be different, is following along similar themes. So here you are, it's the next chapter of your life. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of March 10th through 16th, 2025. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. You can book a consultation with me. Yes, I see clients, and we can discover together where these eclipses are unfolding for you, because in the reality, you have a chart. That chart isn't just your sun sign. It isn't even just your rising sign. It really talks about this very particular space that was created for you to grow and to evolve. I love working with people. So go to my website, again, empoweringastrology.com. You can even still get the replay for my 3-hour eclipse webinar that sort of gives a more richer portrait of eclipses and even looks more deeply into these eclipses for each of the 12 signs. So thank you all. I appreciate you, and I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.